Hey everyone, Oz here with Oz WoW Guides, and in today's episode of our beginner series, we're covering classes. There are 12 classes in World of Warcraft, and each class brings its own strengths and weaknesses. Now, I'm not going to go over each strength and weakness of all of the classes, but more, this is just going to be a top level overview of kind of what are some of your choices and some great resources that you can use to decide on what class to play. When you look at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that there's a multitude of different classes that also have different roles that they can play. Now, the first thing that you're going to need to decide is what kind of role do you want to play. If you are looking to play tank, only certain classes have the ability to play as a tank, and some classes actually can only play as damage dealers and just play as a DPS hero, such as Warlock or Mage, or even Rogue for that matter. The second question you need to ask yourself is, do you want to be up in the enemy's face and play in melee range, or do you want to play back far away and cast from afar and be a ranged hero? So after you've kind of answered some of those questions, it'll help narrow down what class that you're looking at. I would recommend maybe looking at a few external resources that I have here that I want to go over. The first one being World of Wargraphs. This is a great website that kind of shows the layout. This was updated back in December 20th, 2019. It gives a class distribution over time of what's been the most popular class during each time period that the game's been around. As you can see here, Havoc Demon Hunter was the most recent class introduced to the game. It is also the most popular class at the moment. For this is players with at least one boss killed on Mythic mode. For the raid tier that was this would have been for the Eternal Palace raid tier. So what you will notice though is there's a pretty lofty difference between the top played classes and the bottom played classes. But this doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad classes. It's just that for player versus environment content, that there is a discrepancy amongst the populace of the game of what they think is good and what's bad. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is bad, it just means that you're going to have a tougher time getting into groups. But with having a tougher time, or not really a tougher time, but being as in May, there are less players playing that class. So if they bring some form of unique ability or utility, then you will maybe even find it easier to get into groups. So it's just something to consider when you're looking at what class to play or even what specialization. Uh, you may want to look at this website here. Hopefully they update this soon, make it a little bit more accurate for Nyalotha and going into Shadowlands. But it at least gives you a sort of baseline idea of what people are playing. I can tell you down here towards the bottom tiers, Arms Warrior was one of the most popular specs, so this isn't exactly accurate for the game currently, but these bottom three specs were at the end of Battle for Azeroth the least played specs at that time. So it's just something to consider. It also has different PvP for player versus player content ranks as well, and it kind of gives you a distribution of those players and the specializations and stuff they're playing. It's just something to consider when you're looking at what you want to select as your first character in the game. I would recommend, I think one of the best characters to start off with is Druid. After playing the game for myself, I've come to realize how valuable having a Druid is. They are one of the few classes in the game that allow you to play tank, healer, and DPS, and they also have multiple DPS specs. They're the only class in the game that has 4 specializations to choose from. They're a little bit difficult to play as they can shapeshift out of different forms, and you have to set up your key bindings on each of the different forms. So it can be kind of non-player friendly, but one of the things that you will run into later on is if you want to start making gold, one of the best ways to do that is running old content. And nobody is better at running old content than druids. They can go into feral form, which is their cat form, and they have tremendous speed and can clear through old content extremely quickly and they're great for gold making for that purpose. So, two other websites that are great resources for you. The first being Wowhead. This is the website that I use for tons of different things for my characters. If you go up here to the top where it says database, or sorry, to the right where it says classes, if you click on this, you'll see the classes across the top here, and you can select whatever class you're looking at playing. Let's say we're looking at mage, and it'll give you a breakdown of each of the specializations that you can choose from, and they have, I mean, full-blown great class guides here. They cover everything from your gear to enchants and consumables, your rotation and how you're going to want to play your spec, great tips for beginners, some macros. I mean, this is truly going to be your bread and butter for learning your class and your specialization. They have everything on this website from not just even classes, but raid information, everything that has to do with the game. This is your encyclopedia. Think of it as Wikipedia for World of Warcraft. It has everything that you're ever going to need. Any questions that you have could most likely be answered from this website. And again, this is wowhead.com. The second one is Icy Veins. They also have class guides as well up here at the top for World of Warcraft. You'll just click that. And then there is a classes section right here. You can click on this as well. And it's very similar to Wowhead. They will also have, here they have a really great chart for rankings, as well as some guides that give you just general tips if you're looking to tank or heal. Tanking is one of the things that it's hard to recommend for a new player to want to tank, because it is so crucial of a role that until you really understand what's going on in the game and understand the mechanics of the game, you're going to have a really tough time tanking. Healing is not as difficult as tanking is. It's a little bit easier to pick up, but it's much more UI intensive, and setting up your user interface to really work in your favor and help you know where you need to be applying your heals and when, as well as dispelling or helping with debuffs that are placed on your your friendly characters. So my recommendation would be for new players to focus more on damage dealing, as it's by far the easiest to pick up. It's mostly just focused on rotation and not as much on mechanics of the game itself and systems that are within the game. So you can hop onto this site here, and they will have some great rankings that you can look through. These are actually a work in progress, as the final tuning for Shadowlands has not been complete yet. So take this with a grain of salt, if you will. I know that currently these are still considered the top rated DPS specs for Shadowlands, but I can tell you Frostmage has been nerfed, I think 3 or 4 times in the last week alone. So even though we're coming in close to Shadowlands, there's still plenty of tuning that is going on here. My best bet for you would be to select a class and base it on kind of the lore and the identity of the class, and maybe come to this chart at the Shadowlands launch and pick the specialization that is the highest and learn that one, and that'll be a great way to start getting into the content earlier that you want to play in. It'll be much easier to find groups, because if you perform well, you're going to be able to get into groups to begin with, and you're also going to get better gear, which then in turn gets you into more groups. So it's kind of a cycle that feeds upon itself that'll aid you in your endeavors inside of Azeroth. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I have plenty more other resources that I could go to and kind of point you towards, but I'm actually going to do another video just on outside resources that you can find as well. I'm also going to put a link down in the description to a gentleman who has done some great videos on YouTube. His name is Nubkex, and he has been doing a series on every single specialization for each of the classes in the game, and going into Shadowlands, covering everything that there is to cover. I feel like it would be kind of redundant for me to go back and kind of do his work that he's already done. They're full 30 to 40 minute blown out videos and guides that he has done for each specialization, and they're really good work. As I said, that'll be down in the description below. So I hope you learned a few things, and hopefully this can be helpful for you. If you like this video, consider leaving a like on it, as well as subscribing to my channel, as it always helps me. I'm working hard to try to get these videos cranked out as fast as possible for you, so you have them available for the Shadowlands launch, as well as the first week of Shadowlands, and that way it's you have a good time accommodating yourself to Azeroth and to the game, and can make the most fun of your time in the world. So appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.